Yo, hello guys. Hopefully you've had a second to grab a drink, chill, talk, think about some things. We're gonna have Mr. Dimitri /Shades presenting to you guys about some amazing stuff here. I'm gonna give you about a minute or two to get back to your seats, those of you that are out in the lobby, and then Mr. Shades will start whenever he is ready, okay?
You see, Christians can't be true. Cause I can't wait to fall in love with you. Can't wait to fall in love with me. Christians can't be true. You see, Christians can't be true. Can't wait to fall in love with you. Can't wait to fall in love with me. It just can't be so love. You see, it just can't be so love. Cause I can't wait to fall in love with you. Can't wait to fall in love with me. It just can't be so love. You see, it just can't be so love.
If you guys have any questions, you can just DM me on like terminology or whatever. I'll be more than happy to answer. Yeah.
Well,
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, man. All right, everybody. Hello, Toronto. My name is Shades, or Dimitri, and I've been addicted to Genius for 3 years. It's not that bad. But on a serious note, let's talk about Genius in terms of the strategic position of this project and what it does and why you might need it. You liked it, you wanted it, you got it, but I'm going to show you why you actually need it. And so I'm going to start with essentially asking the question that Alice has asked in the Wonderland. Where are we going? Well, and what did the cat say? If you do not know where you're going, it doesn't really matter where you're going to get, right? So I think it's very important for us to understand why Genius and why now. Unfortunately, we can't answer that question without taking a broad slice of what is AI, what is crypto, why are they together, and especially fitting place to do that is this venue, AI and crypto events, merging AI and crypto together. As part of our journey, we're going to talk about long-term events and trends. So I want to take the journey with you and be more logical about what Genius is and where it's going and why you might need it. So, chapter 1, let's talk about AI. A 30,000-foot overview is, we'll start with evolution and the progress of human thought. I know it's probably very far-fetched for a lot of people, but just sort of let's take a step back and see how we've progressed in terms of humanity. So we started hunting, then we started farming. It took us less and less time to go from one type of activity to another. Then we saw science, commerce, industry. Fast forward to 21st century, we're on the precipice of superintelligence being driven by AI. Some of you, or many of you, are aware of things like ChatGPT, chatbots, things that you may use in your daily life. But this is probably 1 to 2% of what's going on in the world of AI. And so I want to take a step into this direction to show you that AI is a disruption. Meaning, the disruption, science and commerce was a disruption to somebody who didn't do it before. Then industrialization came, it was a disruption for somebody who didn't anticipate that. And a lot of people here will not anticipate the superintelligence that is going to come in the next 5 to 10 years. And so disruption is okay, right? We can adjust, we can prepare. The problem with AI is that it's the speed of disruption. It's just exponential. It's not from one year to another, it's several decades ahead in 1 month. ChatGPT, things that you guys have known and used in 2022, 2023, has turned into proliferation of the entire industry, where chatbots are used to help people do commerce, drive cars, robots, industrialization, and so on and so forth. So the problem here is the speed of disruption. If you look at the actual trends of AI, you will kind of see, even not going into details of what specific things AI is doing, is the speed of its evolution. We started in 1998 trying to do some prediction on sentence parsing, and now we're able to generate memes, we're able to generate videos, music. The speed has increased tremendously. Now we can do reading comprehension, but that's not all. We can take SAT tests, we can write research papers, we can be in the 94th percentile on taking the SAT tests. So if before you had to study for 10 to 12 years in school to be able to take your SAT tests and pass, AI can do it within 20 minutes. Biology, molecular chemistry, AP calculus, all of it within 2 years from 2022 to 2024 has grown from 10% to 94% of success. That's not a disruption. It's moving at 3x per year. If you were to put a number on some intelligence in 2022, by 2024, you would have 6 times that intelligence. So with AI on the scene, we're still sort of getting into this disruption and the scale of it. As every adoption happens, the curve of adoption for every technology, you will have the labor that gets disrupted first. Customer service moves to AI chatbots, right? Marketing moves to AI chatbots. Then you've got science and technology. You've got chemical compounds being generated by AI, the formulas. Then robots appear. They will help you, but at the same time, they may take some of your work away. Then military edge, robots on the battlefield, and only then we get to GDP, which is the economic output of any nations. That happens for every technology. Technology is being used in the lab, then technology is being used to make businesses efficient, then you have military use, and then everybody else comes. And so, why do I care about AI right now, especially in the context of crypto, especially in the context of maybe Genius or some other project, right? But personally, why do I care? AI is just a new class of players. We're used to dealing with humans. We do not know what AI agents bring. We do not know how they're going to operate, what robotics is going to do. But it's fairly certain at this point that within 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a breakthrough on intelligence that will disrupt a lot of things. Effects of AI on the market. Can you trade faster? Can you trade more efficient? What opportunities will exist? Effect of AI on compute. Can your laptop do what it could not do 5 years ago? Yes, right? But the AI will supersize that and is going to do it on scale. Automation, economics. We'll talk a little bit of UBI and GDP a little bit later, but that scale that comes, the sequence that it comes with, right? Like cognitive labor, science, technology, robotics, military, and GDP is going to be present. And then what does it do to your financial status or what your financial plans? If you operate in a paradigm that has been, you may be disrupted, right? So I'm here literally to talk about how to protect your value going into this world of AI. So another set of, there's going to be some numbers here and charts. Don't get, too much worked up about it. I'll try to explain as best as I can, but it should be pretty easy to understand that, for example, if in 2025, the global market size of AI is roughly 380 billion, total addressable market cap, right? By 2030, which is only 5 years away from now, it's going to go into 1.8 trillion. That's already known. That's already projected by companies like Google, like OpenAI, Microsoft, and others. But the more important part is not the total addressable market, but the speed with which it's going to get there. Look at this graph. It is an exponential increase of capacity. Right? Humans don't think exponentially. They think linearly. If today I make $5 an hour, maybe today I'll make $7 an hour, I'll be happy. My biggest goal is to make it maybe $20 an hour. That's not how it's going to work. What's going to happen is you're going to have exponential adoption from AI, much like you did in the internet, and there's going to be more disruptive opportunities. Let's dive into that. So, number of industrial commercial robots in millions is the bottom chart. 2025, 6 million. 2030, 16 million. 2060, it goes all the way to about 73 million robots. Look at the inflection point, 2030. I'm going to continue mentioning that number, 2030, which is five years roughly away. That is when we expect AI to be pervasive, and that is what we need to do to prepare for it within the next 5 years before that happens. Again, I keep coming back to this question, why do I care? Well, if we tie it to genius, for example, we'll do it later, but for now, what is income in AI world? What if AI versus AI emerges? What are humans in AI world? What is your income? What is your yield? And where are you actually in this thing? If you have $20,000 saved, how are you going to preserve it? Or how are you going to look at income? Where is the income going to come in the AI world? There are a few studies that have already been done, roughly, 4 or 5 different studies at a high level. You've got World Economic Forum, you've got McKinsey, you've got Oxford Economics, whatever, right? But they all point to year 2030, where you have disruption in occupations. Yes, that's true. We don't have horses out there right in the street. You don't have people manning them, taking care of them anymore. They've been replaced by automobiles, right? Kodak is probably never going to do its own thing on analog photography, even though you may accept Kodak to be a leader. If you were in the 1980s, that's not the case anymore. So it is a real race for adjusting to AI world. They've said that in the US specific, 12 million of occupations will be displaced, and 45 overtaken. That's a long list of people who will have to adjust. It's not all doom and gloom. We'll get to that. I am actually very optimistic about this thing, but we need to get to that. The way we get to that is through crypto. Chapter number 2 is crypto. So crypto adoption market cap. Everybody heard of Bitcoin, right? Some of you maybe even have it. In 2022, it was $16,000 to $20,000. Everybody was bearish on it. Everything was pretty bad. In 2025, it's $100,000. Maybe it's 110 now. That's only 2 to 3 years apart, right? But there are reasons why that happens. The reason why that happens is because Bitcoin is a digital representation of value for all the other changes that are being disrupted in the world through macroeconomics and things that are going on, right? So while 100,000 per Bitcoin is a lot, that's not the end of it. The reason why it's not the end of it is because Bitcoin is digital value. And digital is where we're going. AI is largely digital, right? And so there is going to be a synergy or merge between crypto and AI, as we're going to see. All store of value, total addressable market. So if Bitcoin is roughly 2.7 trillion at the moment, right? We're talking about 500 trillion total addressable market for value. Your stocks, bonds, paper, all of it, right? 2023, it's 500. Again, year 2030, 761. 30 years from then, $5 quadrillion equivalent. Look at the speed and the scale of total addressable market for value and store of value, right? It's not the numbers, it's the speed of it and the inflection point in 2030. If crypto was to take 1.5% of the total addressable market, it's all it takes to grow your value multiple fold because it is digital. Moving on to things that, if you were to dive into crypto, some of it is not just value, it's also the tradable value. You've got high-frequency bots, they're trading on the market, they're scalping your trades, they're taking money from you, for example, if you're trading from one currency to another. That's a big business, but there is a reason why it's big business. The trading is gonna go into probably 37 to 38% increase per year. Again, look at the curve and where it's going within the next 5 years. One thing that I want to sort of talk about or bring your attention to logically is the geography of the adoption of crypto. Now, you may say that we sit here, right, in North America, and we're pretty well aware of crypto, and the entire world is sort of behind a little bit on it. That's actually not true. Asia and Africa is far more advanced in the use of it, if not development for it, but in use of it, than we are. Only recently, within the last 6 months, we've started turning the ship on crypto, but people have been using it for a long, long time where it was mostly needed. I would add Latin America to this list. Again, let's walk back 10 years. We're in 2025, back to 2014. 10 million estimated users in 2014. 2025, we have 861. Where do they come from? Nigeria, Indonesia, emerging markets. And so the thing to take away from this chart is that it grows at 60% per year. If you were to compare that to any company, it's only 20 to 30%. Any of the stock reasonably large company grows 20 to 30% per year. That's only in the growth mode. So crypto, not even in the US, not even in Canada, not in North America, is growing at about 60% per year, adoption-wise. So people find value, everything moves to digital. So if we've talked about AI and you needed to think about your income, your yield, where you are, how you're going to adjust, same thing happens with crypto. If you were in the traditional finance, investing in traditional vehicles like crypto, bonds, and whatnot, you start thinking about the digital side of it because of the adoption curves. They're pushing you to move this way. Again, we're asking, what are humans in this world? What is store of value? What is the yield? And what are you going to do about that change, that disruption? So again, coming back to the digital part of it, you have 2.7 trillion right now, which are growing about 30%, 30 to 60% per year. I'm going to pause this, but I want you to look hard at this chart. I don't know how well the colors come through, but basically that chart shows demographics, world demographics. This is the most important chart you probably want to care about. The curves of demographics throughout the world, where they peak, the trajectories, which countries are diminishing in demographics, which countries are growing. That's important because this is where the adoption comes from. This is what you need to be focused on and build on. So let's go into this. Where are my charts? Demographics versus labor and US government debt. Basically what that means, the more people we have, the more governments will print. That's a reverse trend. Participation rate drops, governments print. Government print, everything goes into assets. Those assets are digital. That's the before it gets to the real economy, it goes into assets like Bitcoin, like Genius, and everything else. And only then it ends up being a real economy, and only then you get your increase in wages, not the other way around. So you can kind of see that whether you're operating under the inflection or under the assumption that's, we're going to see inflation, for example. That inflation is going to move to digital assets first. Maybe when people make money, it's going to move to real economy, and only then businesses will pay money, more salary or wages to people. So if this is the trend, you need to front run it. This is why digital economy, this is why you're participating in it, to be there are 3 steps behind, or 3 steps ahead, actually, before you you can get your wage increase, you'll increase your status by the assets. Again, demographics, birth rate versus US core CPI. We're not doing so good. Because if the birth rate goes down, means less productive capacity for an economy. What happens then? You get deflation, right? Less services, less goods produced. But in conjunction with AI, you're going to have more robots doing the work, which means less opportunities for regular humans. We have to come back to that. We have to see that governments will print their way out from financial perspective, but they also cannot solve demographics. And demographics are precisely in those countries: Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America. So the reason why I'm showing these demographic charts versus financials is to give you an idea where the puck is actually going, as opposed to where you are now. And so you can make educated guess. Somebody has mentioned having legacy for your kids, for your grandchildren, and further on. These are the places where the appreciation is going to come from young demographic countries who are adopting crypto and forced to use AI. So traditional economies are not helping us because productivity is lagging. Demographics is a large trend. In order to replace a human, you have to pretty much, from a government perspective, you have to spend 20 to 25 years of effort, right? So you can't turn the ship around very fast. Debt is increasing. That's known fact. The United States, for example, has over $36 trillion of debt. Demographics is lagging, and so on and so forth. We're not here to kind of dive deeper into that side of the story, but it's happening. Conversely, digital economies. Productivity is replaced, right? Because it's digital, it's fast, you can change it, you can write contracts around it. Debt is converted. You no longer need to go to the bank to get a loan, you can just use DeFi, for example. And demographics is augmented by AI, robotics, and faster rails. So my thesis here is that financial rails migrate into digital world. Then you have AI and robots and crypto likely augmenting your productivity or replacing GDP by countries, especially in the countries that are new with largely younger demographics. But what that means for us, potentially, is that there is going to be a decision made by governments to do universal basic income for non-working humans. If robots are doing most of your work, let's say, or most of the work that is unskilled labor, they have to pay you because they have political incentives to do that. And the question is, do you want to take paycheck from the government, or do you actually want to stay 3 steps ahead of it and create the legacy that you actually dreamt for your grandchildren on your own without asking a government and pretty much selling your vote for their decisions? And so I'm very optimistic where it goes in about 20 to 30 years, but there's going to be a lot of disruption, as you can see. We have to get through the hump. In order for us to do that, we have to look at Genius AI as a way to potentially offset some of the losses or decisions that are being made by politicians, by economics, by banks, and so on and so forth. Use the AI and crypto together to offset your potential unfavorable situation here. So, moving on from my sort of thesis into merge of AI, crypto, and finance, I look at it as a synergy, right? Like it checks all the boxes. Both crypto and AI has efficiency, easy to merge. Both of them can be scaled, very easy to merge. Productivity looks a certain direction. Both crypto and AI want to be more efficient or producing cheaper, right, with less friction. Higher margins, the elevation and exponential growth of those curves are higher in crypto and AI. And both of them are very open and native to automation. Crypto can be automated because it's digital and programmable, and AI definitely can be automated. So you are in this dilemma, strategic dilemma. Do you fight the trend? Do you flight it? If you do, where do you go with your money? Do you freeze and not do anything? Well, Genius AI suggests that you build out of it. You try to prepare for it before things come in 2030, for example, and along the way, to build things out, to prepare for that synergy of AI and crypto. So what is real here on fire problem that we're having here? As we've discussed the transfer AI and crypto, we can see that you need to actually actively think how to grow, protect, and preserve your financial asset value, and maybe get some income opportunities in the digital world. We are there already. We're going there. And we will get there sooner or later. 5 years, 10 years, we'll be there. What you need to do on a personal level, you need to outrun inflation, right? That's sensible. We have, I want to say 5% of inflation right now, even though they say 2 to 3%. Probably going to go much higher because of the demographics and loss of working power results in printing money. You want to ride that disruption in AI trends. You want to augment your sovereign income. You do not want to possibly ask government help. If and when it comes to it, you want to be able to make your own money, replace your current income or part of it with some other resources. And then that's semantics specific to Genius AI, where it tries to help protect you from losses economically and technically. That's a nuanced approach on the project specific, but the first three bullet points kind of stand if you go into AI and crypto altogether. And you have to do it at scale and perpetuity because you have families and you want to continue things to work. So again, coming back to demographics, that's a very interesting subject to look at, but you got to build for it. You got to build for the 860 million people adopting digital. You got to look at the demographics and who's actually buying, who has the money to buy it. You're going to look at the next 10 years when baby boomers migrate their wealth to their children. What are these people are going to spend it on? If I ask anybody in the audience who is under the age of 30, are they going to go and buy bonds? The answer is probably no. Are they going to go and invest in commercial paper? Probably not, right? So you also have to build for things that are coming as opposed to what has been. Just fact of life. The other thing, if you were to abstract out things from personal level and kind of talk about the economies, I don't know if anybody's here kind of building on a larger scale rather than for personal wealth, more for projects and startups and whatnot. But you also have a different trend here. You have trends of countries migrating onto networks. You no longer can say that if you were, give it, I don't know, 20, 30 years back, maybe in the 80s or 90s, you live where you live, you go to the bank, you bank with, everything is sort of local, right? You get service locally. Right now, everything can be so distributed across the world that you can now start creating societies. You don't need a bank next door. You can get bank from the network through the world, right? The real GDP of China is 41 trillion, US 37, and so on and so forth. But the population in the network has annual income of 157 trillion if you take everybody. And they're now networked. You don't go to the bank next door. You go to the decentralized finance, you take a loan, you use cryptocurrency to pay for your goods and services. And so, again, coming back to this idea that we're moving into a digital world, and it's going to be a distributed one, even beyond the country borders. So Genius, long-winded way of coming back to this project. I really want you to understand the why. I want you to understand the design goals for it. Not from the perspective of a technical person, but from a perspective of an investor or somebody who is going to go through these changes in the next 5 to 10 years. What Genius wants to do is wants to use AI to reach financial goals for you. Right? It wants to create a specialized AI specifically focused on financial goals, to do it properly, to do it consistently, to do it in a way that it keeps your well-being and your value in mind. And it wants to rely on cryptocurrency to do that. It's only natural. If everybody's moving there, it's a good rail to build on. To do that, you have to take care of a few things. They're not easy tasks to do. Genius is actually doing that. It's to capture and guard liquidity so you don't have to pay money to the bots. You don't have to pay money to the market makers. You can be one-on-one with your wealth stored on chain, much like you did to the bank 30 years ago, where you could come up to the teller and say, hey, can I get my money back? No questions asked. Now, when you go to the bank, they're asking you, why do you need the money? Genius also needs to capture financial attention, because attention is very direct. We can only, as humans, concentrate on one or two things at a time. So whoever you give attention to gets your money. The question is that person or entity a good custodian of your money? And so Genius goes one step further to not rely on chance. It actually tries to capture the intention in order to preserve the value from it. Then everything is just good engineering, creating positive decentralized income opportunities through its economic incentives, focus on demand generation, establishing incentives within this economy to operate and do it for longevity, because we are not going away. 20, 30, 40, 60 years from now, it should work. So this is diving a little bit deeper into the problem here of AI and crypto merging. So we know they're going to merge. You know you're at the intersection of it, at least from the value preservation perspective. But the way AI operates, sooner or later, you're not going to have curated information. If now you can go and look at Google, do search, and ask a simple question. What is the weight of a beluga whale in Indonesia on a summer, on a full moon in summer, right? It'll give you an example of what it is. Some strange question, but you may want to know that. The question is, what is Google in AI world? Who is giving you the answer? Where are they deriving the answer from? Do they know that you're also sitting on your phone and looking at something that you're interested in? Will they give you an advertising, right? So curated information becomes more important. And so in the markets, in financial markets, AI is going to envelope your value. When you go to trade it and when you go to invest it, you're going to operate on things that you've been told. The question is, what you've been told may not be correct from a financial standpoint, right? And so what Genius does, it tries to insert itself into that process of determining what you want to invest in, give you answers that are factual, correct, and not related to the feeds that you, for example, Bloomberg may give you to invest. Right? So that's the goal, is to make your value an encased cube that gets preserved over the years, or however long you choose to do it. There are a lot of technical details in Genius AI, but essentially what you want to know is that Genius is actually fighting for you by creating a moat of liquidity around your value. It doesn't look at external forces to determine the price. It doesn't know the price. It doesn't know the market. All it does triangulates the intent of your miners and saying, okay, well, that person wants to pay X for that, Y for this. Should I trust? And the reason why Genius AI is able to do it is because it has a system of miners that it actually uses as sensors, right? That's a little bit deeper into where I want to go here, but just know that this project is actually taking care of even minute details to preserve your value. So making the market secondary, again, trusting the feed, trusting information that is coming from the outside that may not be correct, is stopped at the gate. It's all enclosed on chain. You don't need to go out to find out the price of the asset. Trusts its own sensors, generates and triangulates, and responds to the demand. All things aside, what it does, it essentially removes the market to the side and tries to manage your value directly. All because the disruption for AI is coming and says, hi, 2024. It says, hello in 2025, right? It's going to be here in 2030. Details that may be a little bit more technical in nature, but the reason Genius AI is able to do it is because it controls the liquidity coming in, knows its own source, and intelligently distributed the rewards from mining. Other things like economic attack prevention, voting rights, all that stuff. Maybe Robert will go deeper into the decentralized autonomous organizations later, but there are a lot of different things that Genius is doing to continue doing things right for the value. I keep coming back to this, cartoon, the Aladdin, where Genie is kind of doing his dance and says, "You ain't never had a friend like me," right? So I want to consider Genius AI to be my friend as far as preserving, growing, and protecting my value. Technical details, imperishable attention, distributed miners, all that good stuff we can talk more about. But I just want you to come out from this conversation with just one idea, that it's useful, and is being done professionally, specifically so your value is not diminishing, right? To where we're going. I've shown where we're trying to go, right? And we kind of have to prepare for it. If you were to sort of look at Genius, there are like three parts to it. There is royalty economy, NFTs, and so on and so forth. There's miner economy with your virtual miners. That's for people who are more familiar with Genius, or who mine, right, or hold Genius. And there's also summarization economy, that you can actually do things for the network to continue, to make sure it continues working. But three things to note. You and Genius is one of your value, right? You don't go to the bank asking for your money. You follow certain rules, you get yield, you get profit. That is not disrupted by AI. That is not disrupted by your government paying you a check or not paying you a check unless you vote for the right person. Right? You're helping the network. Network reciprocates. It pays you for your help. And it does so with a fair distribution of the inflation that it generates. Long story short, it has solutions for things that are coming up in our world in the next 5 to 10 years. It wants to use network economy because store of value itself is not enough, right? Because Bitcoin itself cannot do anything by itself. It's a very nice collateral, much like gold is, but it doesn't drive revenue. You can't get income from it unless you loan it to a third party who's going to potentially scam you and tell you that they don't have your Bitcoin anymore. It does operate on multi-chain, in multi-chain world where you do not know if Ethereum or Polygon is going to survive tomorrow. You have to be prepared for that. It uses a specific accounting system in order for you to kind of get that inflation, but that's not the only reason, not the only mechanism that it uses to give you yield. For example, real economy, velocity of your activities pay you money. You can create businesses on top of it. You can create trading bots on top of Genius with AI wallet. You can start analytics sites if you're interested in it. You can do education and also get paid in Genie here. So what are the takeaways from this long-winded sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, essay, really? The next world is AI plus crypto. Fast approaching. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, it does not matter, it's coming. Total addressable market is right. 500 trillion going into 1.8 quadrillion of dollars. And all we're asking, we're anticipating is 1% to digital economy. Is not much to ask for. I'm sure it is going to be much bigger because of the trends. but we're not at the inflection point yet. We still have time to do it, right? The curve of adoption kind of inflects at 2030. So there's still time to research and do due diligence. The issue is the disruption, right? But it's also the speed of the disruption that is coming. Prepare for it. Demographics is relentless. We're all humans, right? We expect it. Incomes, assets, a lot of payment rails will migrate to digital, so you might want to align early with it. Most AI and crypto solutions out there, they're solving for supply. They either burn supply to increase their value or not issue enough supply to keep the value afloat. What Genius does, what is revolutionary with your value, is that it solves demand. It wants you to play and it wants you to get paid with it. Genius AI engine, for somebody who is interested in technicalities, is fully on-chain. There's minimal infrastructure if you care about expenses, for example. No computing power, no data centers. And last but not least, it's designed well, coded well, architected well for one specific purpose, is to preserve your value, because if you're happy, you're going to play more. It has allegiance and loyalty to its own users. So if you liked Genius before and you have it, great. But now, hopefully, I've shown you that you might actually need it, right? The use case of AI plus crypto is very valid. It has the advances, it has the, if I was to put the investment case for it, it's pretty clear to me. Hopefully you were able to see that. I want to thank you all, and I'll take any questions if you may have.
Yeah, thank you very much for speaking. Question I have is that, you know, there are like a lot of AIs out here that people in a way fear, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of, I mean, there's AIs that people love to use, and it sounds like what you're suggesting is that AI is your friend when it comes to Genius AI. And I mean, why is that? Why? I mean, I know it's designed for it, but why is Genius AI, you know, the friend versus the foes? Tell me more about like how you feel about that in your heart.
So I come to it from a perspective of, if you look at it as defense and offense in football, right, you have to have your strategy. You can't just go out in the field and play without having a strategy. You have to be malleable. You have to respond to stimuli from the other team, right? You should be able to read the mind of what they're trying to do, and you should be able to defend, turn around, and do the offense. You can't do defense and offense without offense, or offense without defense. I feel like Genius AI is my friend because it tries to balance defending my assets from scams, improper implementation of the contract, overinflating, for example, through bugs or through third party that doesn't need to be given control over the contract, for example, admin controls. But it also does the offense really well. Generation of demand is the offense. It entices me to play because it pays me the right amount that tells me that, yes, I can make more money with it, right? But the problem is, when you generate demand, you have to do it in such a way you don't hurt yourself. I can have a lot of money in my pocket and give it to everybody here, which would be okay for you. It will not be okay for me because I've given it away. What Genius does, it also takes care of its own self. It takes percentage of every single interaction on the network for its own well-being, so it can then pay and grow its own money to pay everybody else in perpetuity. it's very judicious in how it actually manages the assets, right? So it's not shy of telling you upfront is going to charge you 28% if you end early, for example. If it's going to charge you 38% if you want to scrape your value. But those rules are set in stone, they're upfront. You may choose to play or not, right? Nobody's going to lock your money and then tell you, oh, well, it's full moon today, it's going to take you 45%, to get out of this contract. So this is why I think Genius is a friend, not only just a contract, because it thinks about the individual. And again, I underscore that the allegiance is with users as opposed to making money. Because think of it this way. If you are doing the trade on the market and you have three parties, a seller, a buyer, and a liquidity provider, every one of them needs to make money, right? And you're trading because everyone has self-interest. Well, Genius is the third party that it has no self-interest. It only manages the treasury and has the rules to continue managing the treasury efficiently in perpetuity. So if you were to have the idea, let's say justice, if anybody has seen the Statue of Justice, usually it has the scales in one hand and it has their eyes closed. So you don't make decisions based on who you're interacting with. Genius is that benevolent. I wouldn't say benevolent in terms of I'm nice, right? I mean benevolent in terms of it doesn't make money for its own self. It's a robot. It's a contract. It doesn't need it beyond what it needs for its own operation in perpetuity to make you money, right? And so that appeals to me. Through my nature, I default to code. I trust code more than I trust a human in situations where I need to rely on unbroken rules, non-coercible attention, and decisions that cannot be bribed.
Hi, Dimitri. My name is Ruth. Very good presentation, by the way. Thank you. I have a question for you. As an expert on crypto and Genie AI, if you should come in contact with Donald Trump to present Genie versus his meme coin, what would you say to him, and what do you think his response would be to you?
I think Donald Trump has already had this question and responded by relaxing the legislation for crypto, because he realized that there is no other way, much like we've gone through this, and he knows that he has a lot of smart people. It's not because he wants to do it, he does it because he needs to catch up with everybody who is doing it, and the trend is clear. Right? He's a guy of traditional finance. He's a real estate guy. So when I talk to him, I would probably talk to him about real estate and tell him that in order for you to build real estate for everybody, let me rephrase this. If I'm the real estate developer and I want all of y'all to be real estate developers or investors, I have to go into explanation of where to build, how to build, what is the municipality, what are the laws, what are the things that make that real estate go up. And I will also say that it's very, very hard to replicate this knowledge. The barrier to entry is very high. You can't build anything until you have a few $1 million to even put down to get the right things. Here, I will say you can make 15 to 20% on any money you put in Genius. You don't need to wait 7 years until it's built, until the market improves, until you find tenant, until you have tenant who can pay, until you can't evict the tenant, until your zoning changes and your building is no longer in the preferred zone, right? The fact that I can't liquidate real estate really easily because of those things. I can't just turn around and say I'm going to sell. So real estate to me, if I was to talk to him, is a harder sell for a young person who's under 30, for example, who doesn't want to learn about real estate, doesn't understand real estate. And by real estate, I mean all the traditional finance with all the laws, regulations, and things like this. Person just wants to make money, give me 15% and don't take my freedom away. That is the way, that would be the message to him. And let him counter to me why he still thinks real estate is important for a person like me.
But remember, currently he has a coin out there. Yeah, sorry. Currently he has a coin out there. So the question is Genie versus his coin. What would you say to him to convince him that he needs Genie and not his own coin?
His coin is inconsequential. His coin is tokenization of his persona, right? You take any celebrity, they can launch a coin to represent the fractional reserve of their work. What I can say is that if you have Genius NFT, for example, they can be useful. For example, if I have a miner that runs for 3 years and I want to scrape the yield, for example, I've made 30% on it. Let's say it's $1,000. Genius says, if you want to scrape that yield and not wait until 3 years is over to recoup your principal, you can do that. You're going to pay a premium for it, but here are the clear rules for you to do that. And I'm going to say that, your token is tokenized, basically a token of you in fraction does not make me income. Held by founders, most of them, or market makers that are trading on exchanges. So with Trump coin or any other coin, or I won't say any other coin, I would say most of the basic tokens that do not have a purpose except for tokenizing a value, like a meme value or celebrity value or something like that, has no purpose for what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to make yield in perpetuity of my miners. So I can actually replace my income gradually over time. Turab was talking about W-2. If you go to work and you make paycheck, that paycheck obviously is there just because you're working. If tomorrow you stop working, that paycheck stops. I want to replace part of it, and then with Genius Appreciation, most of my income with a tax advantage way, because tax on capital gains is taxed at much lower percent, let's say 15%, over what is being taxed by W-2, which is 23 to 25 to 37%, depending how much money you make. So I am moving to a different tax regime. It's making me money in perpetuity. I'm able to sell it for income when I choose to, or retrieve the profit if I want to pay a percentage, if I say I want to do it early or however, right? So I want to use something for a purpose. It's a hammer in my toolkit. The real estate, for example, it's where I live, but I will be very, very hard pressed to invest in real estate, especially now, with high percentage, mortgages and so on and so forth, because all of it chips away from your value. If you have 15% on Genius, that's a pure 15%. If you have 15% on your real estate, you have to contend with your mortgage payments, you have to do all that stuff. But that's not your question. Your question is specifically for Trump coin, and my answer is it just be useful and usable to me. Will I convince him not to do it? I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares, not so much about my opinion, right? I'm nobody, but it was a social move. It was not a move to launch the coin. And I want...
Because it's things are supposed to come down. Like our cell phones, the first cell phone we ever bought was like $700. And the technology got better and things were supposed to get cheaper. But instead, a cell phone is now $2,500 if you go for the top iPhone, right? So what do you think about deflation? Is it good or bad? And is it really the opposite of capitalism? And I do have two other questions, but I'll let you do that one first.
Sure. So remember COVID back in 2020? Do you remember everything fell, like markets and everything? Do you remember when everything sort of started going this way, K-shape? I can't draw a K here, but K looks like one arm goes up, the other arm goes down. Your Samsung TV costs 1,000 times less than it used to cost in the 80s. Your food, on the other hand, costs a lot more. Your cell phones cost 10% of what they're sold for, the rest is profit. The question is, you're not participating in that profit, because by the time the company like Apple produces it, it needs to pay its share because the value of the share needs to grow. For example, they can't sell you a cell phone for $100, even though it costs $100 to make it. They have to sell you for $1,000 or $2,000 because the rest needs to service the share price that goes up. And when I talk about when government prints, the first place the money goes to is assets. It goes into Apple share price. Then it goes into economy, people spend money, then it goes into increase of wages. And so you're both correct in terms of yes, deflation is a good thing on the technology. The question is, you don't control what technology product you are going to get deflation in, like TV, or the company is just going to say, I have a moat on the market. I'm the only one making iPhones. I can't command $2,500 for that phone because I don't see any shortage of demand. Does anybody not buy a $2,500 phone because your kid is asking for it because it costs $2,500? No, you go into debt. You go into payments, and they tell you, well, it's easy, $30 a month. But that's the $30 a month on the 80% of the profit for the share price. So you got to be really careful about people, things getting cheaper versus how do you pay on the back for things that are getting cheaper, or how do you pay with your payments, for example, things that you want, because all of our industry is geared towards selling you things. You could potentially not buy an iPhone and use a smartphone or whatever. And then you could take let's say you can buy a phone for $500 and then allocate $2,000 into yield generating asset so you can actually make the money back and then do it by the full price. So it's very, as far as deflation tied to capitalism or whatever, the United States has gone through deflation. It was not pretty. 1929 crash. We do not want that. And governments can't have that. Politicians will not get elected if you're going to have this. So they choose to inflate the value of your dollars that you'll receive today. And remember, you receive the value of the dollar today when assets have gone up, because that's where the print goes up first. GDP goes up because you're spending into economy, and only then you get your paycheck increase. So very nuanced take on it. I don't think capitalism is equated to either inflation or deflation. I think these are tools. There are a lot of ways are done or have been done in proper ways. And this is why crypto actually, if the United States government, for example, did not have $30 trillion in debt, there would not be a need to create an alternative system. So things don't work, right? And we don't want to kind of throw baby with the bathwater and say, okay, inflation is bad, inflation is good because it gives us better prices. Gives you better prices. You may also not get a job for that price.
And my second question was a little bit more practical. I'd like to have your opinion as somebody who I think perhaps have a lot of money Now, if we were to talk to any financial advisor, what do they always tell us? Diversify portfolio, diversify, diversify. Now, I know personally, Frederick pushed me into selling some of our BTC when it was down, and when we had just heard about Genius, and so we did that to buy Genie, correct? And we felt good about doing it when it was like $40,000. Bitcoin is now 111 as of yesterday. And so I'm wondering, we still have not regretted that. Because again, Francis, you have explained to us that if you had one Bitcoin and you were to take 10,000 of that and buy Genie, that 10,000 Genie will eventually be more than $1 million. Whereas your one BTC will not grow exponentially, correct? So my question is, should we be diversifying, and if so, in what? Because what the challenge is for most of us, as we wait for Genie to come out, cash flow is a problem. So what do we do in the meantime so I don't have to call my friend Hazel and say, can you lend me $5,000? All right? So what do we do as we...
A very honest question, very nuanced question, I would say. Well, I'm not an investor advisor here, right? But time frame also matters. If you're in your 30s, go for risk. If you're in your later years, you do want to have a little bit more cushion. You know, things where you don't risk everything and whatnot. The one thing I would say is, in respect to BTC and Genius, for example, it's all about the units. Can Bitcoin go to $1 million? Sure. How many people will it take to buy to go from 2.7 trillion market cap to what, $27 billion market cap if we're talking about 10x? You're gonna have to convince the entire world and take all their money in order for you to do that. If you have more units of a cheaper currency, for example, that has potential, your unit goes up faster, provided the product exists and it does what it's supposed to do, and it generates the demand. So if you have one Bitcoin with $100,000 or 10 billion Genius, for example, if 10 billion Genius appreciates 2x, you would have already outrun Bitcoin appreciating 20x. Right? But again, it's all about your personal risks, where you are in life, what percentage you can allocate for your tools, financial tools, preservation, your new company, right? Raising money and whatnot. And so it's not about, yes, I'm not going to claim that Bitcoin is less accepted. Yes, it is accepted now.